Hey everyone, welcome back to Cool Stuff, etc. My name is Riley, and it's been a while. Uh, I just didn't feel like making videos. Um, yeah, nothing more than that really. Just felt motivated to do other stuff, but now I'm back for the foreseeable future. Do videos here and there. Not gonna um, make a huge commitment or anything. But yeah, today, as the title would suggest, I am going to share with you some of the quote-unquote most vile horror films I've ever seen. Other content has been produced discussing disturbing films or disgusting films, so this would fall under that umbrella. And I would say that quite a few of these, if not all of them, are featured in those lists at some point or another. So I'm kind of treading over some things that have already been discussed. But if you're an outsider to these kinds of movies, this will be informative, hopefully. And at least if you're a voyeur to these kinds of things, maybe this will get you interested in watching them. I have 6 films to talk about, 4 of which I own physically, and a 5th of which is coming in the mail pretty soon. And I have kind of ordered these from least offensive, I guess, to most, in my mind at least. That's of course subjective, but just try my best to do that, I suppose. Why don't we get into it? We're starting with a movie that I think is phenomenal, on the merits of a film, and then also just contains a lot of gross subject matter. Talking about Crash. That's a fucking glare. Crash by David Cronenberg. This is the Criterion edition, the Blu-ray. Crash, if you're not familiar, is based off of a novel by an author named J.G. Ballard. And the novel centers around a group of people who fetishize car crashes, car accidents, being in them, witnessing them. And so the movie is about that as well, starring James Spader as the main guy. And yeah, it just explores a lot of, honestly, I find interesting philosophical questions, as Cronenberg films are wont to do, while also being very, very sexual, very, very controversial. To my understanding, this movie screened at Cannes, I believe, and was not well received. Well, by some, I should say. I shouldn't say by everyone, because I think this is considered to be, quite a good film by most people. But for all these movies, I've also written down what particularly about them is offensive, so or disturbing, or vile, or pushes the boundaries, or whatever adjective you want to use. So for this movie, I wrote the conflation of sex with violence or death. That's kind of taboo, I think, to do. Lots of nudity. I wrote lots, but I don't know how much. I don't know if I would consider it lots, but there's an abnormal amount of nudity, and graphic depictions of sex, all simulated to my knowledge. And then I think that another thing that this might just be unique to this movie on this list is that the atmosphere created by the directing and the lighting and the cinematography and the soundtrack is just it's very moody, but it's also, I don't know, it feels kind of gross. I don't know how else to put it. So I think that I really considered not including this one, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought about how overall the way I feel when I watch it, it kind of leaves me with a bad taste in my mouth, in a good way, but it's a bad taste. So next up, this was a holy grail film for me for a long time, in multiple ways, one of which just I had known about it for a while, and heard crazy things about it, wanted to see it, and suddenly it was on Shudder one day, and I watched it immediately, like without question, like without even hesitating. I just turned it on, and then after viewing it and loving it, I was bummed to find out that it wasn't really very accessible to purchase, at least in the U.S. and for Region A Blu-ray players. I don't have a region free one. I might never have one, but anyways, and then I found it on this little video store that's I think it's in Kansas, called Grindhouse Releasings. Oh no, it's in Tennessee. And I much like how I watched it, I purchased it immediately, and yeah, and I have been glad that I did ever since. So this is Martyrs. It's been released by Beyond Genres. It's a series of films, I suppose. Umbrella Entertainment, and this is region free, so it's any region could play this Blu-ray. I guess I should tell you about the plot. Martyrs, if you're not familiar, is about these women, one of which was kidnapped and tortured for many days, and escapes. And as an adult, she seeks revenge on the people who kidnapped her. And I will do my best not to spoil these movies. So I won't say any spoilers that I think are meaningful to the plot or anything. But so I won't go beyond that. Oh, I just realized I showed the back of this box, and that's kind of a spoiler. But anyways, yeah, it starts crazy and it gets crazier. It's constantly ramping it up. It's very intense film. The filmmaking is, even though I love this movie, I do find the filmmaking to be a little of its time, just look of it, I guess, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just, that's something to know going in. It kind of looks like it's artsy. I don't really consider it to be an art film or art house film or whatever you might call it. But yeah, Martyrs is quite a trip. I know it's only number 2 of 6 on this list. I think other people might put it a little higher, depending on their tolerances for torture and graphic violence and depictions of suicide, as well as just a very nihilistic outlook. This is not a feel-good film. You will not walk away from it pleased with being alive. You will not find purpose or meaning in this movie. So just know that going in. But it is an experience. If you're a horror fan, you definitely need to watch it. I think even if you are a fan of just films that kind of push the envelope, this is something to look for. I don't know if it'll be on Shudder again anytime soon or anything like that, but perhaps it will. Currently, they just have put on some other French extreme horror from the mid 2000s or early 2000s, like High Tension. So maybe at some point they will put this back on, and if they do, you should definitely give it a watch. All right, the third film isn't one of the ones I do not have to share, but it is the one that's coming in the mail. And this was another one that I had been looking to watch for a long time. My friend Vivian recommended it to me, and I found it interesting because she's not the kind of person who typically seeks out really disturbing horror films, or at least to my knowledge. I guess I don't know all of her proclivities or whatever, but so it stood out to me as an interesting recommendation, and I had access to it. She offered to use her account. I don't know what even streaming service it was on, and and so I had her long information. I never watched it, and then again, just like Murders, one day it was on Shudder, and I watched it almost instantly, either that day or the following, and I was extremely thrilled, thoroughly watching it. It was disgusting. It was exhilarating. It was very artsy. It was very gross, and it was compelling. And I'm talking, of course, about Possession, directed by Andrzej Zulawski. I don't know how to pronounce the name. I believe it's Polish. I think it's Polish. Yeah, if you've seen this movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say it's gross. If I had to give a brief description of the plot, just the first part of it, I won't go into details because again, all of these movies really you need to know very little about them other than maybe some like potential warnings for what is depicted. But basically, this dude is a spy. It takes place during the Cold War era, so Berlin is split between East and West, and so that's kind of part of the setting. And he comes home, and his wife wants a divorce and tries to kick him out, and things just go from there, and it gets very intense. It's very psychosexual, very violent. I would describe the movie overall as an intense fever dream. Things make little to no sense upon a first viewing, I would say. It's one of the movies. It's a movie that if you're intrigued enough by it, you'll want to read up on it, hear what the director has to say, hear what other film critics and people who analyze movies have to say about it as well. There's nothing else I can say other than what is depicted. There's gross body horror stuff, which is always great. Definitely some violent scenes. Like Crash, it depicts sex and violence and gross bloody stuff. I don't want to spoil what happens, but there is a certain, when you see it, you will know. But there is a certain depiction of sex that really will get to you. And then, of course, there's the quote-unquote subway scene. Again, I won't spoil what that means, but just know when you see the subway that is when shit's gonna pop off. So Possession. I was thrilled that I could find this online. I think it's actually the same edition, like the same series as this. And I'm just glad that I was able to find a copy, and I can't wait for it to come in the mail. That's Possession, followed by I've given a lot of preface to all of these movies, so this one I'll just show you. Antichrist by Lars von Trier. I think it's Trier. Very controversial filmmaker. He has said things that are very stupid. And his movies often come across very pretentious and self-important. And I think that's it kind of puts me off from watching his other movies. But Antichrist at least was gross enough that it kept me interested. Lots of gross shit happens in this movie. Lots of really depressing shit happens in this movie. Willem Dafoe's in it, if that intrigues you at all, which it did for me. I was going to show you there's a good deer. The deer is on this, and I can't show you the deer. Basically, what this is about is a couple loses their child to a horrific accident, and to deal with the wife's grief, they go to this secluded cabin in the woods, and they kind of I would say maybe you just like go insane, cabin fever type thing, where it's like you're isolated from society and tensions are high, things keep happening in the woods, and it's kind of supernatural. It's kind of biblical to my knowledge, and things definitely escalate. I will tell you that much. It's hard to escalate from the opening scene of this movie, which is not just child death, but unsimulated sexual intercourse. A close up of that happening, which accompanies the death of the child. So that, like, juxtaposing those two things is very gross, very auteur, very avant-garde, as Mr. Lars is wont to be in his films. And then from there's animal death, other gross stuff with animals, specifically with this deer, and what that deer gives birth to, or is giving birth to, or whatever. There is violence, as you would expect, but particularly there's genital mutilation, which is depicted. It's not inferred. It is depicted. You will see this happening. Yeah, and then if that weren't enough, this movie may be highly misogynistic, which is definitely worse than genital mutilation. I honestly can't tell what he's trying to say, or if he's trying to say anything. But just like, I don't know, just how they discuss gender in this film definitely makes me feel like he does not have a high opinion of women as a whole, which, I mean, that's fine, I guess. That's up to him. Yeah, anyways, it's pretty gross. On its merits as a film, it's not my highest recommendation on this list. In fact, I would say it's probably one of the lowest. The previous three films that I've discussed, I would recommend much more than this one. But it was an enjoyable enough watch. It got me thinking, and you know, it is nice. It's very pretty. I will say that it's very, very nice to look at. Very emotional film. The acting is great. Charlotte Gainsbourg and Willem Dafoe are awesome. They're both great actors. Yeah, so Antichrist. Sorry for the glare. I'm just like not going to close this window because I need lighting, and my overhead light is not good. This is not a professional studio. I am in my fucking game room. So yeah. All right, the next one. I'm looking at this and it's like I feel like I want to switch what was number 5 with number 6 right now. But I guess I guess I won't. But what I'll just say is that this movie and the next movie are probably interchangeable. They're probably tied for like the grossest ones that I've seen. So yeah, I will get into it. This is Ichi the Killer, directed by Takashi Miike. If you are not familiar with this film, it has a very big cast of characters. There is Ichi, the titular Ichi, of course. He is a killer. He is a brainwashed assassin, very, very deadly, and he'll kill anyone he's told to, basically. Excuse me. And then also, when he gets horny, he kills people, or sad, he gets horny. When he gets sad, he gets horny, and then when he gets horny, he kills people. There's also Kakihara, who is the man on the cover. This is not Ichi the Killer, as you would be led to believe, as I had believed for many years, seeing the cover of this film and not having seen it. This is Kakihara. He is a sadomasochist who works for this Yakuza boss who he has a sexual BDSM relationship with and who goes missing. And so he's trying to find him while also chasing down Ichi. And then the third guy is just some detective guy. But he's important to the plot, but he's not as interesting as the other two. So yeah, it's just a movie about how those three characters kind of weave in and out about a story about this mob boss getting kidnapped. Excuse that jump scare machine that I have in this room. Yeah, I mean, the opening scene will preempt you for the entire thing. And I'm gonna talk about it, and it's gross, so excuse this. I'm just gonna use very factual language. Essentially, immediately upon the movie beginning, this woman, this sex worker, is being raped by her pimp, and someone is watching. So first off, a rape is occurring, as well as assaulting during said rape, and then watching from the window is a man who is masturbating, and he then finishes his business, and the title of the film rises from the little pool that is created. So if that isn't the most informative depiction of what this movie is about, I don't know what else would be. On top of that, the violence is so over the top. It's comical in a way how over the top it is. There are several more depictions of sexual assault, torture, child death, and then of course just again that very taboo conflation of sex and death or violence. But it is ratcheted to the extreme, whereas Crash is more tasteful, more classy, you might say, mostly due to Cronenberg's very clinical style. This movie is just taking all of that to the very extreme. So that's Ichi the Killer. This is another movie. This movie, on its own merits as a film, I would recommend. I think it's phenomenal, but it is very, very, very offensive. And I mean, there's not much else to say about it. I couldn't tell you what exactly it means. It's a movie that kind of makes me think if it's just doing these things for the hell of it, just because it can do it, or transgression for transgression's sake, or if it's trying to send a bigger picture. I've read some things about how it's trying to talk about how the audience might view violence and sex, but I don't know if I'm fully convinced about that necessarily. But anyways, this is very, very extreme. Of these movies, I think that this is likely the most extreme, but it could be tied with the final pick, which I have, which is Necromantic. This is directed by Georges Buttgereit, I believe is how you pronounce that. And that's Necro with a K, and Mantic also with a K at the end. So the funny thing about this is that it's probably the most disgusting movie on this list. Not disturbing, disgusting. There is a distinction to be made there. But it's also the funniest. It's also the most campy. It is very low budget. But that doesn't stop it from being disturbing or vile. Basically, it's actually a very simple plot. It's about a man and his girlfriend who are obsessed with death, and he cleans up crime scenes for a living, and he finds this corpse in the lake, and he takes it home, and he and his girlfriend have sex with the corpse, and things just go from there. It doesn't really get more complicated than that. But it's incredibly gross. Obviously, necrophilia is a main aspect of the plot. The human body in general, anatomy, they have in their apartment, which is very dilapidated, very structurally old, antiquated. In their apartment, they have shelves of human body parts, eyeballs, tongues, genitals, whatever. So they're very death obsessed. So just a lot of sex, a lot of death and violence, depictions of sexual assault, at least one, male nudity, which is always great. That's a plus. I mean that genuinely. There is this is why this movie stands out to me, because it could just be this very campy horror film from Germany, but it kind of has like some artsy inclinations, like dream sequences and stuff, as well as this like it's a non sequitur. It's out of nowhere, but I mean it does make sense in terms of the themes. But in the probably the first 30 minutes of the movie, I think they cut to a poor little rabbit. Like it seems like it's like filmed like it's a documentary. Like it's just like an unbroken shot of this dude demonstrating how to kill like knock a rabbit out, slit its throat to drain the blood from its body, and then skin it. And it is a real rabbit. It is unbroken because they're showing you that this is real. And yeah, he skins this fucking thing alive, this poor animal. And you see it all, and it's very shocking. And then of course the final scene of the movie, which I will not spoil here, is incredible. It is equal parts hilarious and gross. So, and this movie is on Shudder. Oh, excuse me. I believe the sequel is not. I have not seen the sequel. Yeah, Necromantic is a trip, but I also again really enjoyed it. I think that it's as a film, unless you're into low budget horror films like I am, the aesthetic quality of it, the direction might be a put off even more so than what's being depicted. But to its credit, it is quite short. It's about an hour and 15 minutes, I think. So it's not like it's going to overstay its welcome. And I think that it honestly, even though it is very campy, it does have something important to say about, it has this sort of like psychosexual subtext about the male psyche and, it's what's the impotence, how impotence sexually or financially leads to gendered violence and that sort of and male suicide and stuff like that. So it is saying something. So I think that's why I can kind of pardon it for being very crass. But I mean, yeah, it is still going to be offensive to like 90% of those who view it. Unless you are well-versed in these sorts of movies, this is probably going to shock you quite a bit. So, yeah, and this is the one that I don't have, or that I can't really, I don't know if I can find a good copy of it for cheap. Anyone has an idea where to get this on Blu-ray or even DVD, let me know in the comments. I would appreciate that. But, yeah, that's basically it. This is much longer than I was expecting it to be. So hopefully you stuck around. Hopefully you enjoyed it. There's a lot of movies like this that are really disturbing and gross, and it's kind of interesting as sort of a sociological experiment to like watch a lot of them and really dark, really disturbing films. But I don't watch a ton of them because they do. If you watch too many, they do fuck with you. I am medicated for a reason. So yeah, but if you have other recommendations of what I should watch, feel free to leave them. I would be happy to think of some more. I have some in mind that I'm gonna watch and maybe continue this as sort of series, but I wouldn't expect another episode of this for at least a couple months or so. Just because a lot of them are harder to find. And I don't have the time to like go looking for some random torrent somewhere or whatever. And really don't have the motivation either. It doesn't intrigue me at all. But anyways, that's been the video. If you liked it, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, feel free to comment. You can dislike it too. It doesn't actually do anything, but feel free. And yeah, hopefully I'll continue to make movies. Hopefully I'll continue to make movies. This is a movie. I'm making a film. I'm going to enter this into a short film festival. So hopefully you vote for me. Anyways, I've been rambling for far too long, so I'll just leave it at that. And hope you have a nice one, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.